Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Pat.
And I'm Erin.
So today we're going to introduce our writing unit, which is all about getting caught in a lie.
Ooh.
Now, this is, I think lying is something that it's almost human nature to do.
Yep.
We lie for different reasons. We lie because we don't want to do stuff, because we do want to do stuff, because, we could claim we're being noble and we want to protect somebody from someone,
or
from something.
We don't want to get in trouble.
Or we don't want to get in... Yeah, those are the first lies we tell are, my brother did it.
Right.
Not me.
I didn't do it.
It was like that. That thing was broken when I walked into the room. It couldn't have been me who broke it. My family actually had an imaginary boy called Billy, who was the one was blamed for
He did all of the things.
He was the one who got the blame for all kinds of breakages, damages, that sort of stuff. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, and so there you go. Billy was that kid. I'm not sure what he looked like, even though he lived in my house.
Doesn't matter.
So that was one of the early lies I got involved in. This is about, however, when you get caught in one, when someone figures out you've lied and the consequences. Okay, so that's our topic. So let's get into our article. Okay, so whenever you've got a written assignment to do, one of the first things you need to do is make sure you clearly understand the topic and the instructions.
Right, so for the topic, we all know what a lie is.
Yep, that's nice and easy.
Human nature. So we have a clear idea of what we're going to be talking about. I'm sure we've all been caught in a lie at one time or another. I know I have. But the next thing we need to look at is the instructions. Now, it's important to read the instructions for any kind of essay or writing exercise because you need to know how you're supposed to write it. If you don't know how to write it, you're going to have some trouble doing that.
Yeah, you need to know what's expected of you. If you don't read the instructions, you could end up writing a brilliant essay, a great piece of writing, but the teachers won't like it because it's not following the right instructions. You're not doing what you're asked.
And that does happen to writers who work as a job. I know that I've been given instructions and maybe I don't follow the instructions clearly and I get my assignments back and you said, no, you have to write this again, which I do.
There you go. So what we see here is that we're writing an article about being caught in a lie. So when someone realized you were lying and what happened because of that, we know it's got to be around 120 words and we're going to divide it into 2 paragraphs.
Right.
So immediately we've got 2 paragraphs to be working with. So we're going to have one and a second one. So here's immediately a clue we can use for our approach. We know the first paragraph should contain all the important details, so who you lied to, why you did it, how you got caught, and the second can talk about the consequences, so what happened afterwards and what you learned from the experience.
Right. Now, once we know all these things, we can use different tips and tricks that we're going to teach you later to put these together. But we've come up with a little game to play with you guys. It's called 2 Truths and a Lie.
The idea here is that we're going to, both Erin and I will challenge each other by saying 3 things.
Right.
But one of them is not true, and we have to guess what it is. Over to you.
Okay, well, I have 2 truths and a lie. You have to guess which one my lie is. Number 1. I have taken a train all the way from London to the very end of Russia over a period of 6 weeks.
Ooh.
Number 2. I have flown in a hot air balloon in Taidung's Hot Air Balloon Festival. And number 3, I have bungee jumped from a height of 134 meters.
Well, that's remarkably specific to say the number. So I think that one is likely true.
Okay.
And I think I remember you telling me about a long train journey once before, but I can't remember whether you said you wanted to do it or you had done it. I'm going to go with you've done it, and I'm going to say it's the Taidung one. I think that's the lie.
That is correct. Good guess.
Because that was the most obvious. You've been here a long time. You should have done that. I should have done that.
Right, but I definitely haven't.
Okay, well, here are mine, okay? I have traveled in my life to Croatia. Croatia. Number 2, I have traveled in my life to Malta. Malta, I think it's pronounced. Malta. Number 3, I have traveled in my life to Denmark. Danmai.
Oh, all in Europe.
All in Europe, where I'm from.
I'm going to have to go with your lie being Denmark.
You are correct.
Yes!
I have never been to Denmark. Despite it being the closest to the UK, I've never had the chance to go there, whereas I have been to Dubrovnik in Croatia and Malta with my family on vacations.
Well,
there you go. There's some lies. We obviously know each other reasonably well, or we're fairly good at guessing.
Guessing lies.
There you go. So, those are quite small lies. Those are not important. What we're writing about in this article is a big lie, one that had serious consequences. So, when you're writing, we don't want just a little white lie. We don't want a small lie that you told.
Right.
You know, we want something you did that actually had a serious result and maybe forced you to change how you behaved in the future. That's the kind of thing we're looking at. Okay, so let's start then with the first paragraph, okay? So we know that this is a narrative essay, which means we need to basically go in chronological or time order. We need to start with the earliest stuff and then go forward in time till the latest stuff.
Right.
We don't want to mix up that time order. We need a beginning, a middle, and an end. So first, we need all these basic details before we can start figuring out our story.
Now, there's an easy way to do that. What we have to do is we have to think of our question words in English, which is the basis of any narrative paragraph. The question words are who, what, where, when, why, and how. Okay, so if you write down all of these question words on a piece of paper, you can think about your lying story and answer these questions in short, simple answers. Now, we've done this in the article, and we can show you how to do it with our sample article and answer these questions. So here's a sort of idea of the question you might want to ask. Who did you lie to? When did it happen? Where were you when it happened? Why did you lie to that person? Here's the important one. What was the lie? And how did you get caught? So now you have to remember, you want to put these all in a time order. Tell them from the way that they happened. Like Pat said, from beginning to end. Okay?
Now, what Erin just mentioned was a really good idea, which is making sure you note some of this down. If you're going to do a writing essay or even an exam, have some note paper so you can take notes, so you're not using your test paper to write too many notes and take up too much space and make a mess. It's always good to have some note paper, some scrap paper around, so you can kind of figure things out and cross stuff out and move it around.
Right.
Okay, so we've got these questions. Let's take a look from our example article at the answers. So taking sample 1, who did you lie to? The answer is my friend Doris.
Right.
Okay, we'll see a bit. We can get into these things a bit more. We add details later, but we get the basics down first. When did it happen?
In high school.
Yeah. Where were you when it happened, when you told the lie?
I was at school.
Why did you lie to that person?
Ooh, I didn't want to hang out with her.
Okay. Now, there's, of course, going to be follow-up questions to that. Why didn't you want to hang out for her? But that's, again, we just need to get the basics first and move on from there.
Okay.
What was the lie?
She wanted to hang out after school. I said I had a family emergency.
There you go. And how did you get caught?
Ooh, okay. Now here we're going to put the events in the time order. First, I went to the mall with my friends. Then I saw her there. Next, Doris knew I had lied. And finally, there was nothing I could say.
Yeah, you couldn't make up another lie like, hey, this is really what happened and so on. It doesn't quite work that way. So that basically, those are the building blocks of our first paragraph. Each of those little pieces of information we will be able to, in a short while, expand on, turn into sentences, form into a paragraph. But we're still on the planning stage, so let's take a look at the second paragraph now. And again, we go back to those question words: what, why, when, how, who, and where, and so on. And this is what the questions are for our second paragraph. What was or what were the result or results of what happened? So we need to know that. How did you feel at the time? How do you feel about the lie now? You know, several years may have passed. How do you feel about that experience? What have you learned from the experience? And how are you different now because of what happened? That's what we're looking for in this essay. We're not just looking for I told a lie, I got in trouble. We're kind of looking for a bit more of a change that occurred in you. Maybe you decided to do something better or different. And we're talking about a lie, so we mean, did that make you more honest? Right.
Did you learn anything from this lesson? Now, when we start talking about introduction, body, and conclusion a little bit later, we'll learn that the second paragraph, these questions will have a little bit more about how you concluded. And so that will lead into the conclusion that you'll write.
Exactly.
Right. Now, you'll notice that we're still using the how and what kind of words, question words here, but we're adding a little bit more detail to them. Like Pat said, we don't just want to know what's going on. We want to know how it feels to you and probably how it feels to the other person.
Of course, yes.
Okay, so if we go over these questions with a little bit of information from our sample article, we could say, what was or were the results of what happened?
And we've got Doris and I couldn't be friends after that.
Right.
And another one, she never spoke to me at school.
Okay, now that's not a great thing. Okay, so how did that feel to you at the time?
Well, I was ashamed, and in fact, I couldn't apologize. I was just so ashamed.
Right, and also she wasn't talking to you.
Yeah, and she was really angry.
Okay, well, how do you feel about the lie now that it's later on and you're looking back?
Well, I still feel awful, and one reason, I can still remember the look on her face.
Right.
I can remember her face when she saw me in the mall, you know, knowing at that moment that I had lied.
Right. Okay, what have you learned from the experience?
Well, I've learned not to lie in that way, not to make up excuses to get out of social engagements.
Right, and we can explain a little bit more about that once we're building the essay. But right now, let's look at our last question. How are you different because of what happened?
I'm more open and honest.
That's a nice short answer for a really quite difficult question.
Yeah.
And we can also build on that. So remember, when you're doing this part of the essay, you can just keep these answers really short. You don't have to explain in full detail, especially if you know you have a cap of 200 words. You don't want to go over that. You want to keep your answers short at first and only add the information you need in later.
Yeah, and this one is only 120 words. So
right.
What that means is you really need to make sure you get the important details, but nothing that doesn't really matter to the article. Right. Nothing that's, is this relevant? Is this important? If the answer is no, then it's something you can probably leave out. Okay? Of course, you can go over 120 words. The instructions just say at least.
Right.
So here it looks like between the first and the second paragraph, you've got plenty of examples to go by. Okay, we're going to take a short break right now. We're going to come back in a moment or two to look more at the structure, the outline, and how we can build up on those simple, short details. Okay, so welcome back, everyone. We're now looking at, we've got all the details, we've got all the information we need to write this essay. But that doesn't make an essay. That just makes a collection of words and sentences. Now, it's fairly easy just to write one sentence for each of those kind of short answers.
Right.
You know, where was I? I was at school. Who was it? It was I lied to my friend Doris.
Right.
But this doesn't really make an essay.
It might make an essay for maybe someone who's very young and is really just learning how to put sentences together. But since we're a bit older, I feel like we can add to these sentences and maybe just add all the supporting details in.
Exactly.
But there's a first step, isn't there?
There is. Whenever you start an essay, of course, you need to work on your introduction. We need a good introduction to the article. And the main thing, really, is that anyone who's reading it needs to know what's the article going to be about? What are they going to expect to see from this? Now, our article in the magazine does explain a few different approaches. So let's look at the writing samples we have to see how this works. The first one is, I always try to be honest with people. The reason for this is that I was once caught in a lie.
Okay.
So if we read that introduction, then we know it's going to be a personal essay. It's going to talk about a personal experience about being honest and about being caught in a lie. So that explains perfectly what the whole thing is going to be about. It's introduce the topic, the main person involved, and it also highlights there's going to be a change in that person. Something happened to change the way a person is.
Right.
What about the second sample?
Well, the sample number 2 says, when you're caught lying, the people you're closest to might lose their trust in you. Moreover, lying can impact the way in which you see yourself. So what we know from this, it's a bit more general than the other one was that someone is going to think poorly of you, and you'll want to change some things about yourself. So we know there's going to be a lie that happens because someone gets upset and you change the way you behave.
Yeah, so again, we've got mention of the subject, caught lying, and here it's more going to be tied to something we'll mention in a moment, how the introduction and the conclusion can tie together.
Right. Okay, so we can refer to the outline with our writing samples here. Okay, so we're looking for some ways to add more details to our topic sentences. So for writing sample 1, it says, I always try to be honest with people. The reason for this is that I was once caught in a lie. Now, here you're going to start with who. We know it's a personal example. Okay, so you're going to start with who I lied to. Now, we know that the person lied to Doris.
A friend, yeah.
Right. So we're going to talk about this friend, Doris. And in the sample, it says, I used to be friends with a girl named Doris. Now, that mentions you. It mentions Doris, your friend. And it also mentions used to. So now we've set up that you are no longer friends with Doris.
Yeah, exactly. And we can also look at our outline and see that the topic sentence in the outline is basically going to put the topic sentence there. I've always tried to be honest. It's giving supporting detail 1, which is the what happened and who you lied to. Supporting detail 2, I went shopping with other friends and bumped into her at the mall. So these are longer versions of the stuff we had in our answers to our who, what, where questions. And it's giving a topic sentence and supporting detail. So just those 3 sentences, they make up the skeleton of our first paragraph. And we've done the same for the second one, the topic sentence. It was impossible for us to be friends after that. Our supporting detail sentences show why. I was ashamed to apologize. She never spoke to me. And then so on. And so you can see how you've built up topic sentences, supporting details into a conclusion that explains how it goes. Now, we're going to take this into even more detail, but first we're going to read through the entire writing sample so you can see how this story pieces together.
Writing sample 1. I always try to be honest with people. The reason for this is that I was once caught in a lie. I used to be friends with a girl named Doris. She was nice, but we had very different interests, so I stopped hanging out with her. One day, she asked me to have dinner with her after school. I lied and told her I had a family emergency. Actually, I wanted to go shopping with some of my other friends. We went to a mall, but imagine my horror when we bumped into Doris. I couldn't think of anything to say. She knew I'd lied to avoid spending time with her. Of course, It was impossible for us to be friends after that. I was too ashamed of myself to apologize to her, and she never spoke to me at school again. The look on her face when she saw me at the mall still makes me feel awful to this day. Ever since then, I've always been open and honest with others and never made up excuses to get out of social engagements.
Okay, so there is our full sample, and we can see how we've added some extra details to the outline that we've made to kind of really build up the full picture. So we know we used to be friends with a girl named Doris, and then more details here. She was nice, but we had different interests.
Right.
So there's nothing wrong with her, but we're not really interested in the same things. So I stopped hanging out with her. I stopped wanting to spend time with her. It's like, she's okay. We can meet for lunch and do stuff, but do I really want to spend social time with her? Maybe not so much. So we're kind of getting an idea of who and where and some of the why.
And why, yeah. Now, this kind of brings up the why. And like when you have a friend and you think they're nice, but you don't really want to hang out with them, it's difficult to tell a person that because they might not understand. And so maybe this person thought they were being polite by not saying, but their lie, which was, I have a family emergency, was what she used to tell her this instead of saying, I have other plans.
Yeah, or I'm too busy tonight, I'm too tired tonight,
Right.
That kind of thing. So, actually, the writer says, I wanted to go shopping with some of my other friends. So there's our extra detail. We know what she really wanted to do in preference. Then we move on to the getting discovered, the how did you get caught in the lie? Go to the mall, we know that. Imagine my horror. Now, that's a good phrase. So this is saying, think of how horrified I was when we saw her.
Right.
I walked around a corner and bumped into her. To bump into someone means to meet them by accident. So here we're using words like horror to kind of build up the feeling and the emotion in the piece.
Right. Now, though, that's an important thing to do here. You're not just writing the facts. You want to build up the emotion because you're going to be talking about that a lot in the second paragraph. We're going to be talking about feeling ashamed and not speaking to each other and feeling awful. And without adding those small little details in there, in the second paragraph, it might not mean as much. So it's important to make sure that you add in these little words here and there that will help make it easier when you get to the next paragraph.
So if we look at that first one, just to wrap the first one up, we can see the who, the where, the why, the what, the how. We can see all of those details, but we've now got them put in chronological or time order with the extra details, with the full sentences, and with the transitions words, things like so and she knew that I'd to, so that lied to do something, so that shows progression of time. So we can see how it all fits together from start to finish and explains our first idea of being caught in a lie. We've told that part of the story. So we move on to the second paragraph, which is the results.
Right. And then the results, remember, we talked about what did you feel or how did you feel when you told the lie? And so our topic sentence, it was impossible for us to be friends after that. We know that you're not friends anymore. And now, how do you feel? I am ashamed. So this is where we say, I was too ashamed of myself to apologize to her. You felt so badly. And she never spoke to me at school again. So obviously she feels bad. You have to add that detail in there too.
Yeah. Now notice there we've also put some of our simple ideas from our outline and we've strung them together in a single sentence.
Right.
Okay, which is what you need to do for more complex writing. I was too ashamed of myself and she never spoke to me. So we've got two clauses to combine the two results.
Right.
And now we kind of move on to how you feel now. The look on her face when she saw me still makes me feel awful to this day. So we've got some adverbs and adverbial phrases there to show that it's still this thing that you've done bad still makes you feel ashamed, makes you feel awful. There's another emotional word in there.
Right. And after that, we're going to tie back to the conclusion. Now, we talked about this briefly before. Here's where you can see where the introduction and the conclusion sort of tie together. The conclusion proves what you said in the introduction.
That's right.
That's a good hint to remember. So the introduction, remember, was I always try to be honest with people. Here in the conclusion, you've said, ever since then, I've always been open and honest with others. Here's where we relate them to each other. And we've got all of our supporting details to show how we've done that.
Okay, we're now going to take a quick look at writing sample 2. Writing sample 2. When you're caught lying, the people you're closest to might lose their trust in you. Moreover, lying can impact the way in which you see yourself. This happened to me in my last year of senior high school. I'd been invited to a party by Tony, a boy I liked. I knew my parents wouldn't let me go, so I told them I would be studying at my friend's house instead. Tony, who was supposed to drive me home, had drunk too much alcohol at the party. I didn't want to get on his scooter, but I was far from home and couldn't afford a taxi. Tony promised to drive slowly, so I agreed to go with him. Unfortunately, we got into an accident because he couldn't drive properly. The police called my parents and told them what had happened. My parents were furious when they found out I'd lied. In fact, they still don't trust me the way they used to. I was also extremely upset with myself. However, I did learn the negative consequences lying can have that night. Now, I always exercise better judgment and tell the truth. So that is our second sample. And again, notice how we've got the introduction, people losing their trust in you, and lying changes the way you see yourself. Those are our kind of topic sentences. And we see through the article how that happens, you know, what led up to those things with our details, who, what, where, how, and the consequences. My parents trust me or don't trust me the way they used to, and I was angry with myself.
Right. So in our conclusion, we've tied together the part from the introduction where people you're close to might lose trust in you. This person's parents have lost their trust in the person, and you might change the way you see yourself. Here in the conclusion, we see that the person is upset with themselves for doing what they did. And we've also tied in how the person has changed. Now they always exercise better judgment. They always think before they act.
And tell the truth, basically, because getting caught in a lie, as soon as you get caught, you're in a huge amount of trouble, and because there's no way back from it.
That's
you know,
right.
you can make up an excuse, but it's going to have to be a really good one. So you can't really make an excuse. You have to make amends and earn back the trust.
That's great.
Okay, well, that is the end of our writing article. We hope it's been useful to everybody, seeing how we've taken the details from the simple questions all the way up to a full article. And that's all we've got time for today. So thanks for listening. I'm Pat.
And I'm Erin.
For English Digest, goodbye.
Bye-bye.